Hi, I'm Janine Lindquist, a prevention specialist and an educational content creator. You're about to hear a tragic story from the results of vaping high-potency marijuana. This video was created to try to educate both youth and adults around the risks of choosing to use substances like this. The work we do in prevention is trying to go upstream, to turn off the faucet so we don't have to mop up the mess, to try to get to the root of the problem. And part of that is being able to educate both youth and adults so that they're not believing the false beliefs that these substances are safe, that they're not habit forming, or that they're the fix that they are looking for the pain that they may be feeling. So please take a minute to watch this video and pass it along to others. And check out the other video content on this channel created to educate, encourage, and empower viewers so we can all be our best selves and we can all move forward along our own personal journey of wellness. Thanks for watching the video, and please pass it along.
Hi, and welcome to this video regarding my daughter's story in marijuana vaping. My name is Cindy Gresham. I am a mom, and I am the founder and president of Haley's Helpers, which is a 501c3 nonprofit that I started advocating for youth mental health in honor of my daughter. Basically, we kind of do that through education, which is like speaking events like I'm doing here today, and then also workshops with actual kids and students. So I wanted to share our story just basically to educate parents and kids about the dangers of marijuana. I'm just going to jump right into it. So my daughter, Haley Gresham, was 15 years old when she took her own life on September 7th, 2022. She had just started her first year in high school. It was the most shocking, horrific, earth-shattering, traumatic. It's hard to put words to it. It's a nightmare that you never want to happen and you can't get out of it. And it basically affects every nook and cranny of your life in places you wouldn't even think it would affect. It just changes everything. We really had no idea that Haley was struggling with anything. And that was odd because Haley and I were super close. She literally told me every day, like everything going on in her life, everything going on in her friends' lives. And I just thought I knew everything. I thought she would feel comfortable talking to me. But unfortunately, she didn't want to be a burden. And also, I think she just didn't want to disappoint us. So she, didn't talk to me about probably the most important things. And then one thing that taught me is, I guess we never really know what's going on through our kids' minds. I think as parents, we think that we do. Even anybody in our lives, like we just never really know what's going on in their minds. Haley was like a natural compartmentalizer. I did not know what that term was until this happened to me, and my counselor explained that I was like that. So if you were to talk to me or see me, you would have no idea, even early on, that I'm going through this huge grief, because I'm able to kind of put it on a shelf, look completely normal, act completely normal, and then I pull it out later when I'm alone. And I think she was able to do that too, because none of her friends or us saw any signs of her struggling with anything. So let me tell you a little bit about Haley. I think that people think in this situation that we don't want people to bring our kids up that we've lost, but she's always been my favorite thing to talk about, and she still is. So Haley was a very kind and loving soul. She, even as a small child, everywhere we went, she would always be stopping people and talking to them or complimenting them. And she would tell us that they looked sad, or she always felt like elderly people got ignored in our culture, so she paid like special attention to them. So she truly just had this wonderful spirit and this wonderful light to her. And I think like everybody was sort of drawn to her, and she it would always leave people in a better place than she found them. She kind of would listen to your problems and she would help you with those. And she kind of let you leave with her light. And she kept a little bit of your, your darkness. And she just truly was a person that people were drawn to. And she, she loved horror movies. She would watch those with my husband. I can't stand those. She loved nature. She was an incredible artist. She was just so very creative, and she just was fun and funny. She was always laughing, always joking around, and she just had this beautiful spirit to her. And she would sacrifice herself for everybody else's happiness, which is kind of why she's the last person anyone would think would do something like this, because this is so devastating and it hurts everybody. And that was part of why it was so shocking. We just couldn't even wrap our heads around her doing this, because it was just so opposite of her personality. She really didn't fit your typical stigma of a suicide risk. There was no history or mental illness or depression. She, like I said, she always just wanted to have fun. She was just a beautiful person inside and out. She had a big friend group, and I think they kind of revolved around her. She got along with almost everyone. She made friends, really easily. She just was happy and laughing most of the time. And matter of fact, my husband and I, it's like nightly, would be like, Haley, shut your door, because she would be on the phone with her friends, FaceTiming or whatever. Or they were playing video games, and it's just belly laughs coming out of the room, and we couldn't hear anything. So again, we just didn't see any signs that she was struggling with anything. So I think as a parent, in this kind of a situation, you want to blame yourself for everything. I know I have. I have thought of everything, probably conversations, things that I said back to when she was 3, blaming myself. I shouldn't have said this. Maybe she took it this way. I should have known. I'm responsible for her. I should have felt this, all of it. But if I'm being honest with myself, even knowing what I know now, looking back, there weren't a lot of signs, but there were a few. However, if I didn't know about the dangers of marijuana vaping, I wouldn't have seen them. So just a few things that I noticed over the last year is she dressed a little bit differently. Not anything bad. She just kind of had a more baggy style. She just kind of like overnight kind of started changing. Like she had a baggier style. She started wearing her makeup a little bit differently. She was wanting to be with her friends more and more. And Haley and I, she's our only daughter. So it was the 3 of us, and we really hung out as a family a lot. And she and I did all kinds of things together. We had our shows we watched together. We go to the movies together. We did all these things together. But I noticed more and more she wanted to be with her friends. More and more, she was kind of shutting herself in her room and talking to her friends. She was going to bed late and sleeping late and missing her alarm a lot. And I was concerned about that because I knew she was having trouble sleeping. The one big sign, knowing what I know looking back now, is she became really lazy. So Haley was always a pleaser. She would do a lot of things just to make you happy. And she, if you asked her to do something, she would do it right away. But we noticed over the last year that we would ask her to do something. I mean, literally, we paid her like $35 a week. And I think she just had to like Swiffer and feed her cat and her guinea pigs. And she just didn't do it. And she kind of didn't care if we got mad, which was unlike her. And I kind of was concerned. So I started asking other parents, that had, people or kids her age or older. And everyone said, oh yeah, that's your typical teen. She's just becoming a teen. That's what happens. And looking back, I was thinking, okay, I think I was a little bit like that. Like I didn't listen to my parents and I didn't want to do my chores anymore. I want to be with my friends all the time. So I just, thought like, all right, this is just a phase we're going through and part of growing up. Haley got in trouble for the first time about 4 weeks before she left us. She never really had done anything wrong in the past. The only thing I can really think of is when she was 5, she was going to go into kindergarten, and she hadn't went to preschool because I was home with her at that time. And I started worrying because she's our only child, and she was, the youngest grandchild with a huge gap. And so she was catered to, like we catered to her. So in our house, Candyland like was a big thing. We play Candyland, but you would actually win real candy. So I realized like Haley's gonna go into kindergarten and she's never learned to lose. So she's gotta lose one time. So I sometimes you can't always rig Candyland so that you lose. So we would always give her the candy if we accidentally won. But this time I legitimately won the candy, and I ate the candy in front of her and kind of like teased her like she would me, just to give her a sense that you don't always win. And she leaned over and bit me on my leg so hard that I literally had, I think, a bruise of every tooth in her mouth on my leg. So like that is the only thing I can ever really think that Haley did wrong. So we never really punished her. Because she didn't do anything wrong, so we hadn't really grounded her, did anything like that before. We always respected her privacy because we never had a reason not to. So I never went through her phone or her backpack or her room. And looking back now, I really wish I would have been a snoop, been one of those parents that snooped. And I think like sometimes as a parent, like we think we're smarter than our kids. So like I remember thinking like I'm never going to be as dumb as my parents were. Like I get everything over on them, but it's not true. Um, so when Haley got in trouble for this thing that she got in trouble for, it wasn't like the worst thing in the world, but it was also something that I didn't think that she would do. She was at a friend's house with a friend when she got in trouble, and their mom had to call and tell us. We had to go pick her up, which gave her time to go into her phone into Snapchat, and she unfriended her friend so that I couldn't see the conversation, because she was assuming I might go through her phone since she got in trouble. But she was smart enough to leave a few conversations in there so I wouldn't know. And yeah, it worked like a charm, really. I had no idea that she deleted those all out of there. However, I will say she left one thing in there. It was a conversation about someone owing her a breeze and a cart. And now I didn't know what those terms meant, so I had to Google those. And I found out that those are terms for vaping weed and nicotine. So I confronted her, and she came clean right away. She said that she had been vaping nicotine for about 2 years, which was super concerning to us because she had really bad asthma, and that she had been vaping weed for about the past year. And I started realizing like that's why we've been going to all these emergency visits with her asthma and her not being able to breathe. And it was really scary because she couldn't breathe. And we were bracing her there, and we just thought it had to do with her allergies getting worse and they were adjusting her medications, but really it was this. So that surprised me because we had had so many conversations like age appropriate through the years about, drugs, about, smoking, all of it, suicide, just all of it throughout the years. And then to know that she had asthma and was still doing this, and she was scared because she couldn't breathe, but she still continued to do that, was concerning. So I started remembering like she was telling me about one of her friends, and we had talked several times about her friend vaping marijuana. Haley was concerned. We had several conversations about, what Haley could do to try to help get her friend from doing this, and I said to her, like, okay, wait, but we've been talking about your friend this whole time. Like this whole time you were doing it and you were telling me about her. And she said, Mom, she said, you know me really well. I knew that you were going to be the one that probably would find out about it. But I knew, because we're so close, I knew you well enough to know that if I was sharing all of that with you, you wouldn't think I was doing it. And let me tell you, it was brilliant, because I like literally said to my husband, like, we can pat ourselves on the back, because if she's telling me about this, then that means she's not doing it. She's listening to us. She went on to tell me that she had been manipulating me for months, and that I was the easiest person for her to manipulate because we were so close and we knew each other so well. So that was hurtful and angry. It made me very angry. And the next day after I had cooled down, I went in and I wanted to understand, like, why did she start doing that? Why did she feel like she needed to vape marijuana? Like, how did that all start? And she told me that her friends had told her that it would help her with her anxiety. And I knew, like, we knew Haley had some anxiety. She, even in elementary, she had some from like test taking. She would always worry that she was going to be the last one, and it would give her so much anxiety. So we work with the teachers for her to like be able to take the test in a separate room. I knew that she had a lot of anxiety from her friend group. Not that they're great group of friends. We are super close with them now, but at age 15, there's just a lot of drama that comes along with a friend group. And she had a bigger friend group. Even her immediate friend group, was bigger. And then there was like a kind of an extended friend group. So there was always some kind of drama going on with people not getting along, or that she needed to kind of referee. And then there was some fighting over, boys and all of that. And Haley felt like it was her job and her responsibility. Like, she was the glue that kept that friend group together. And we knew that was giving her a lot of anxiety. But I had asked her, do you feel like you need to like have medication or whatever? And she said no. She's like, I'm handling it. And she was kind of doing some meditations and different things. And she did her art, which she said helped her. So I was more, not that I wasn't angry that she was vaping marijuana. I was. But again, I was surprised and not surprised, because I knew she was probably going to do something, try something. She was kind of at that age, so I assumed it would be drinking or something like that. So I was more concerned about the anxiety. Like, that bothered me, like her having all this anxiety. And to me, if we could fix the anxiety issue, that would fix the need for her to be vaping marijuana. I could not have been more wrong. I can't even tell you. I could not have been more wrong. I should have been so concerned about the marijuana vaping. I thought it's just weed. Everyone has done it. People have, been doing it for years. It's not addictive. This is a teaching moment. Thank God it was just that, because, we can get her past that. And I kind of felt like we were going to nip this anxiety thing in the bud. And then she wouldn't smoke weed. I just kind of thought like, all right, that's going to resolve on her own. And I could not have been more wrong. So I am a person that I come up with a game plan. If I have a problem, I come up with a game plan. So that's kind of what I went into game plan mode with her. I got her right into a counselor. I had her into a counselor next week, so we could kind of address the anxiety and all the pressure and stuff that she had with her friend group. She also had shared, like, she just had anxiety that I think every kid has to deal with now, which is driving. That's really scary. Back in my day, I hate saying back in my day, but back in my day, like, that was our freedom. We couldn't wait. Like, we were there, open, trying to get our driver's license. But these kids kind of are scared to drive nowadays. So she had that. She was going to, go start high school, which was intimidating. And then all of the college pressure starts coming in, with the school and everything. So she was going through like some of your general anxiety that I think, our teens go through. So I got her in a counselor to try to help with all of that. And then I asked her, to start writing a journal just for herself, so that she could kind of get everything out of her, like all the stresses, all the things she was worried about, just, journal and get it out. I also told her to like come up with a list, maybe things to do in the future, so she had things to look forward to. So those were the kind of things that we were, that we were working on. And she shared, some fears with me about actually quitting vaping marijuana. So she was afraid, like, her friends, she was afraid of losing her friends. She was afraid they wouldn't see her as like this cool, chill person that they, saw her as. And I was like, Haley, half of your friend group, you've been friends with them since elementary. So they knew you before you were, vaping marijuana, Haley. And, then I said, like, a mom thing. I think that it's good advice, but I don't think that kids always appreciate our mom wisdom. And I was just basically like, if these new friends that have only known you since you've been doing this don't, want to hang out with you, then like they're not the right people. Those aren't your tribe. But she said, well, it's not like nothing like that. She said, they just wouldn't, they would respect that she didn't want to do it, but they would still want to do it. So she was afraid they would stop including her in things because they wouldn't want to do it in front of her. So she naturally would get like excluded. And she was afraid they wouldn't want to do with something with her one-on-one, because if they wanted to vape marijuana, then it wouldn't be as much fun with somebody that's not vaping marijuana. So we decided to kind of table that discussion with the counselor, and I decided to ground her. I grounded her for about 3 weeks, which would be shortly before she started school. But basically, more than a punishment, I just wanted to pull her away from the friends and just let her detox from being around all of that, being around all of the drama. So we took her screens away, and then also I wanted, it would give her some time to get some tools under her belt before she went back in with that friend group with the counselor. So that was kind of the plan. And then oddly, we started seeing the old Haley come back, like the one that we didn't realize that we kind of had lost. We knew she had changed. We just sort of thought it had more to do with growing up, but we started seeing her get up early. She started cleaning and caring about her room again. She started eating healthy. Haley had always eaten healthy before, and then we noticed she like barely ate, and then when she did, it was junk food. So we just started seeing some of those things come back. And it was, she started reading, and she just started doing a lot of activities that we hadn't seen her do in like the last year. So we were concerned about her starting the new school year, because she was starting high school, which is intimidating, and also a new school, and she got lost very easy. So we were worried about what kind of anxiety that was going to bring going back into the friend group. But actually, she said it was like the best year of starting school. So she had somebody in every class, one of her friends in every class. The biggest thing, the biggest worry is lunch. You don't want to have nobody in your lunch, you have no one to eat with, and you're by yourself. But she had, several friends in her lunch. She said that out of all the schools, it was the easiest school to start, because even though it was big, it was kind of like a square, and then you would just go up. So she said she found her classes really easy. So we were super relieved, because it just seemed like she just seemed like in a really good place, and it seemed like a very easy start to a school year. And so I think they started like a couple days before Labor Day. So Labor Day weekend, we went to Blake's Sunflower Fest, and we let her invite a friend. So this is kind of the first of her going back around her friends, other than, when she saw them at school. And then, so that was on a Sunday, and then Monday was Labor Day. And then Tuesday they went back to school, and she asked me if she could do something with her friends after school. So this is the first time letting her go back into her friend group. So when I went to pick her up that evening, like she was so happy. Her friends were so happy. She was very worried that her friends were going to like move on and forget about her because she was grounded for 3 weeks. They were so happy to see her. She was so happy. They all came out. They were around my car. They're showing me all these videos that they did, these funny dancing videos and stuff. And they were just super happy. She was super happy. And so when she asked me the next day if she could go with her friends again, this time they had a friend that was a little bit older and he could drive, and they met him through the church youth group that they were in. And I was a little bit concerned about letting her go with a new driver, but I decided to let her, and she just did this on her own just to make me feel better. Like she was texting me the whole time. She would text me when they leave one place and go to another. She was sending me pictures of what they were doing, and they were just being kids and having fun. Like there was a picture of somebody in a grocery cart with a lampshade on their head and they were being pushed around. I mean, they were just having so much fun. And I could just tell she was having a really fun night. She asked me like what time she needed to be home, and I said 8:30. She got home at 8:28. My husband and I were upstairs in our bedroom watching a movie, and she came in and she said, Mom, I had the best night. She's like, I just had so much fun. And I said, yeah, it looks, like your pictures. And then we kind of talked a little bit about the pictures and the fun she was having. And she said, I need to go change and do my math homework, before I go to bed. And I said, okay. So, probably about 15 minutes later, 20 minutes later, I started falling, feeling like I was going to fall asleep. And I was worried that I was going to fall asleep, and I wasn't sure if I needed to drive her to school the next day because one of the other moms and I are kind of taking turns taking the girls to school. So I, texted her and said like, hey, do I need to set my alarm? And she didn't answer. And then I, was calling for her and she didn't answer, but I assumed she was downstairs in the basement. She had like an art desk, an art studio down there. So I figured that's where she was doing her homework. And she was gone. It was that fast. I went down, and she was gone, and I couldn't even figure out what was going on. But the police had found on her desk like a very short note saying she was sorry, and she was just gone. I think she was home maybe 20 minutes. So it was devastating, and I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Like I kept thinking like she had to be raped or like something catastrophic had to happen that night, because my daughter would never do this. Like she would never do this. I felt like I was in the twilight zone, because this is the last person that would do this. So when something like this happens, there's an investigation. So they take everything, and they wouldn't let us back up in her room or anything like that. So they took like her journals and her phone and her computer and just all of it. So we really didn't have anything to like go on to try to put the pieces together. It took me weeks to be able to even like go in her room and try to look for something. I would do like a drawer at a time. It's all I could handle, but I did find the first note, and that she had left us. She had left us. So the one that the short one that the police found, and then she left one in her memory drawer, which I found, and then later on we found another one that she had written to notes to everybody in a spiral notebook, and another one to her dad and me. So the first note provided some kind of clue, and we're going to show you the note here. This is in her own handwriting. This is her goodbye note to us. So it says, she has very messy handwriting. That's from her dad, not me. It says, I really think I used to be a good person, but I turned myself into a drug addict. And I don't care how much people say you don't get addicted to weed. I definitely am. That was a huge statement. That was huge, because my daughter is saying that she's addicted to it, and she sees herself as a drug addict from marijuana. And I couldn't wrap my head around that, because that's not the marijuana that I knew. So that's when we started realizing that there was something more to marijuana. We just didn't really know at the time what all it was. I finally got the journals back in her phone. It took about 12 weeks. And in her journal, she wrote about fears of losing her friends. She had so much fears of losing her friends, So this is the journal I asked her to write while she was grounded. This is the reason why we have a clue. So she had written in this journal for 3 weeks. And she just had worried that her friends were going to forget about her. She worried about all the drama that they were going to, the friend group was going to break up without her. They're, holding it together. And that her friends weren't going to like her anymore because she wasn't vaping, and they wouldn't want to hang out with her anymore. She didn't know if she could quit vaping. She was worried she would burden us with all her problems. She was worried if she told us that she was addicted to it or had, couldn't get off of it, or talk to us about it, that she would be put away in a rehab center. She hated herself for lying to us and what she had done to us. And she saw herself as a failure and a disappointment. But most of all, she talked about seeing herself as a drug addict. And the tone of those journals did not feel like my daughter. They were very frantic and just anxiety ridden and negative, and just filled with just so much worrying about everything. And that was never really who Haley was. Haley was kind of the type of person that if her friends started doing something wrong, it would upset her, but she would get to a point where she was like, all right, I'm done with them. And she'd go find a new friend group. And everybody wanted to kind of dress like Haley and be like Haley. And Haley hated that. She wanted to be unique. So to be like frantically worried about all of that, like it just didn't even, this journal didn't even feel like my daughter or how my daughter normally thought or dealt with things. Haley had a plug, and I did not know what that was. So basically, a plug is a drug door dasher. So you can order your drugs electronically, like you can, text them or however they get a hold of them, and place your order, and then you can electronically send them funds. Now, I watched Haley's bank account like a hawk, so she knew she would not be able to get away with that. And I found out later through her friends, what she would do is she would have them pay for it, and then she would DoorDash them food or, buy them lunch or whatever, dinner when they went out. She would pay it back in some other way that she knew I wouldn't question, because they all kind of, sent each other food. It was like a thing that they did. So the plug would come while we were sleeping and leave them in the mailbox, and then Haley would go out and get them, and we never had a clue. So I was surprised at that. I found out who her plug was, and it was a student that had been kicked out of the high school and was of age to be able to buy it. So we never knew that anything like that existed or how easy it was to get everything, because marijuana was legalized in Michigan right around the time Haley was in middle school. So these kids were like guinea pigs for all of this. Like this is the first generation that we've had to deal with the legalization of marijuana and all these new marijuana high potency THC products that nobody really ever mentioned. It kind of quietly came in, and they've just left the guise of marijuana still being like marijuana, like that we think of, from back in the day. Her friends also showed me where I could find like her personal videos in her phone. I think it was for YouTube. And there were several videos of Haley vaping in her room with us next door at night. And we never smelled it, and we never had a clue. Haley never locked her door. We never knocked. I would just barge in there. Never knew. And she was doing it all the time in the room, because when you vape marijuana, it really doesn't have much of a smell, and it dissipates really quickly so that you don't see the smoke. And they do it in school even. So in these videos, you could tell like she was getting high, and you could tell she either felt really beautiful and she was, had music on, and she was doing like the things the kids do where they're singing to the music. But most of the time she was crying, and she had sad music on, and you can write things like on the video. And she was writing things like a lot about her fears. And you could tell like that Haley was like spinning things into her own narrative, like maybe taking something that her friend said and they meant it in a completely different context, but in her mind she was hearing it negatively towards her, which is not something that I ever knew Haley to really do. She also was writing things like the weed doesn't help anymore. And the one thing that really, really stood out to me was she wrote how she hates how her thinking and her brain works now. That was huge. She knew something was going on in her brain, and that it wasn't working like it used to, and that she wasn't thinking normally. she knew it enough to hide it so that people didn't know, because I think she didn't understand what was going on, and she didn't want people to judge her or think something was wrong with her. She also wrote how she hated lying to her mom constantly because I was her favorite person and she was mine. So it was very hard because she was having to lie to me about everything. And I think that was really, really getting to her. So it was just really hard with those videos because I realized that my daughter was suffering. She was depressed and miserable and crying right next door to us with me in the next room, and I never knew to go help her. Like, I never knew what was going on. So that's just really, really hard to wrap my head around. It took about 16 weeks to get the toxicology report back, and it showed what we started, I guess, what we started learning and suspecting. It showed at extremely high levels of 3 different street THCs, which is, what is the thing in pot that gets you high. And they were extremely high, and not because, Haley was doing an excessive amount, because these new THC products are super high potency. So what I didn't know then, because I didn't know anything about marijuana vaping, but you can't just get off of it. It's extremely addictive. It actually causes more anxiety. It creates and causes anxiety. It also triggers several mental illnesses, which includes depression. So it triggers depression. It creates suicidal thoughts. It does all of these things. So she had been doing it for about a year. And so it was creating all of these things. And then when you go off of it, then you get all of these withdrawal symptoms, which makes things worse, which makes people think, oh, see, the marijuana did help because I felt better. They don't realize that the marijuana created those problems, and then now you're in withdrawal. So those things that you're going through are even stronger. So it was like the perfect storm. So you had Haley, who had been doing it. It was messing with her thinking and her brain and creating all of these, depression and anxiety and suicidal thoughts and all those things. Then she cold turkey goes off of it because she's grounded, and now she's going through all these withdrawal things, which affect you mentally as well. And then she goes with her friends, and we found out when one of her friends offered it to her that night, and she did it, and she did the amount like she would normally do, but her tolerance from not being on it was way down. So she basically got marijuana toxicity. And I think she was having panic attacks and all of this, which I know she was, because her friends did share with us later that night. They had to pull over because she was panicking so much, and they had to try to calm her down, and she was scared to come home. So Haley was going through some marijuana toxicity, I think she was dealing with that night. And so the toxicology report kind of confirmed like all of our suspicions. So I have so much information that I know about marijuana vaping. I will share a little bit with you. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail because there's a great video on the site from Laura Stack, who I have learned a lot of information from. Laura Stack had the same thing happen with her son, Johnny, and they live in Colorado, and Colorado was the first state to legalize marijuana. And he took his life, he died by suicide from marijuana vaping. And she has this great, I think it's like 20-minute video that she will educate about all the things about today's marijuana. And I just really encourage you to watch that. The one thing I do want to just tell you, like the shocking part of it that I found shocking when I do speaking events, I think this is what most people found shocking, and her friends, when I told them. So marijuana, we like to say, is natural, right? It's a natural thing. It doesn't, it helps mental, issues. It doesn't create mental issues. It helps, pain, all this stuff. There is no scientific study confirming any of that. And we also think like it's not addictive and all of that, but just let me tell you a little bit. So there's these high THC products, which is dabbing. So like that's basically breathing in vapors or whatever. They are not, there is nothing natural about them. They're all chemicals. And so Laura will go into this in more detail, but basically they take the trichomes of the plant, they put it in an extractor, they run a solvent, which is chemicals. It's like butane or propane. They run that through it, pull the chemicals out, and then they kind of like concentrate them. And so like back in the 70s, I think there was like the THC in marijuana was like 1 to 2%. And then I think like in the 80s, it maybe went up to like 2 to 4%. I may not have those exactly right. But today's marijuana can be, these high potency products, marijuana vaping, they can be up to 99% pure. So think about that. People were getting high in the 70s, passing around eight people, and it was 1 to 2%. And then, here we are, it's like 99%. And it's just so strong. You're taking chemicals to extract chemicals, boil them down to make them stronger chemicals, and then you're smoking it through something that adds chemicals from metal. So it's just a bunch of chemicals that you're putting in your body. I don't think anybody, if you said here, let's do this butane, anybody would think they would want to put butane in their body. It creates anxiety. It may calm it down for a little bit when you hit it, but it creates more anxiety. And then also like the high with vaping or dabbing doesn't last as long, so you have to keep repeatedly hitting it. So you're constantly hitting this thing, right? And so you're getting addicted to it. You're using it all the time, and it can cause suicidal thoughts and suicide, as we see unfortunately in Haley's case. It causes depression, but the biggest thing is, and Laura again will touch on this more, is in an underdeveloped brain, it changes the thinking. It changes the thinking in their brains. They're doing a lot of studies on this, but I think they think that it like binds to the chemicals of an underdeveloped brain, and it actually changes those chemicals. And again, it's like highly addictive, and it's super hard to get off of. So kids find like they literally can't function without it, and they become unhappy, depressed, nauseous. They can't sleep, which explains a lot of the things that my daughter was going through, laziness, just all of it. So unfortunately, going through all of this, I learned that my daughter was the classic case of what happens with marijuana vaping, a classic case. And she was never this person before. She was kind and smart, and she would never think of hurting anyone. And she was just such a beautiful person. And this drug changed her and ruined her thinking, and how her brain works, and changed her thinking. And she just didn't know what was going on. So knowing that, I realized that, even though suicide is listed on the death certificate, it's this high potency THC what killed my daughter. That's what killed my daughter. So the reason I wanted to tell my story is it's in hopes that no kid has to go through what Haley went through. I can't imagine, like, she felt so alone. She didn't know what was wrong with her. I think many parents think like I did. When you hear about marijuana vaping, or even suicide, my kid would never do that. That's what I thought. I know what's going on in my kid's life. I thought I knew everything going on in her life. I mean, her friends are freaked out how much I know about them, and I know a lot of stuff about them. And they can't believe like how much I know, because Haley would share like everything daily with me. This stuff doesn't happen to people like us or kids like mine. I know that's what I thought. Haley came from a great home. She had two parents that were, together. She, she was happy. It just didn't seem like that would be something that would happen in our house. And it was just, it's a rude awakening, because you just don't know what they're going through. As parents, I think we're the first defense. So I think it's our job to be a little bit of a snoop. If only I snooped through her backpack or, her room or whatever, I might have found out early enough that she was doing it to be able to get her off of it so she didn't become addicted. It wouldn't have been a year later that I busted her. Maybe I would have found that very early on, before it had a chance to harm her brain and her thinking. I think you need to know who your kid is hanging out with. We were pretty good about making sure we knew everybody that, the parents that Haley hung out with. But I do remember she went with this one friend one time, and we weren't really comfortable with it. I knew the family had a lot of drama and problems, even all through elementary. But against our better judgment, we kind of let her go anyways. But we did not feel comfortable letting her go back. And I found out later that her mom smoked a bong with my daughter. And then through my research, I found out that parents and parents of friends are it's starting to be a more common way that kids are getting this and doing it, because I think the parents are just like me. They're just not educated, and I think it's no big deal. Like, I think they think like, oh, it's marijuana, it's legal, it's no big deal, it's just weed. And it's so wrong. Like, we just don't know, and that's what I'm trying to educate. Most kids seem to be vaping, and most parents think their kids aren't doing it, so the math doesn't add up. Haley's friends can only name a couple people that don't do it, and the ones that have gotten off of it and have struggled to get off of it are having a hard time finding people to hang around with, or they're 17 now, so like people that they're dating that don't do it. They're having a really hard time, because they say if they're around it again, they know they'll start doing it because it's that addictive. If only we had known all the dangers of dabbing, vaping. If only we would have known all of that. Vaping is just like the liquid form of dabbing. So if we'd known all of that, we would have known she wouldn't just be able to just quit. And we would have known how serious and devastating this drug is, and we could have gotten her different help. I would have had a completely different game plan if I would have known everything that I know now. I would have been so alarmed about marijuana vaping, and I would have jumped in a totally different direction had I known everything that I know now. If only. If only Haley would have been educated on all the dangers of marijuana vaping, maybe she would have known, she would have had the knowledge to know, like, hey, I remember learning that it makes you feel this way, or it does this. And maybe she would have, been able to identify it and know that it wasn't her, like something wasn't wrong with her, it was this. And maybe she would have gotten off of it or asked for help. Or maybe if she knew all the dangers of it, she wouldn't have done it in the first place, because she did share with me, my husband's family, like, alcoholism runs in that family, and it's always scared her that if she were to drink, that she would have that issue. So she shared with me when she got caught and everything, that's why she did marijuana, because she was told that it wouldn't, she was told that it wasn't addictive and it didn't do all of those things. So she thought she was choosing something that was like safer than drinking. So maybe if she would have had all of this knowledge, Haley would have never done it in the first place. Again, just thinking of her feeling sad, depressed, alone. She wasn't understanding why she felt that way, what was wrong with her. She's dealing with all of this anxiety, and it just breaks my heart that she was doing this all alone and nobody knew. She had all of these people that loved her, and no one knew. So if only. I just don't want anybody else to have if onlys. So I hope if you take away anything from this video, that you take away just how dangerous this is for everyone, but especially our youth, because they have underdeveloped brains. It is different. And I just hope that you just take away all of the things to look for and watch for. And if you're thinking that your child, isn't vaping marijuana or wouldn't do that, I 100% thought that. So please just don't assume. So thank you so much for letting me tell my story, and thank you for your time. I encourage you again to watch the Laura Stack video and learn more about marijuana. She also has written 2 books that you can find on Amazon. So if you want more information, we're in the process of building out our website. We're going to be adding more and more resources on it, but our website is haleyshelpersfoundation.org, and with an emphasis on foundation, because we did learn that even though it's not the foundation name, there's somebody that's using Haley's Helpers. So I just don't want you to end up at the wrong place, but theirs is about volunteering to help at hospitals or something like that. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and if you have any questions or ever want to talk to me about anything that going on or more information, you can reach me on Facebook or Instagram at Haley's Helpers. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.